Good afternoon. It's December 13th, 1:30. I'd like to start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for the people that are in the audience. Today is a town hall with the South County Water and our Drain Commissioner's Office. We want to update on the agreement, the new contract, and any comments or questions you have. So we want to get out a lot of good information today, so we really appreciate you being here. I'd like to introduce our Drain Commissioner, a friend of mine, Dave Thompson.
Good afternoon. I lived in Bedford for 21 years, so it always feels like I'm coming home when I come down here to the Township Hall. So it's great to be here. I'd like to introduce my staff. My Chief Deputy, Tim Sergo, is on my immediate right, and on his right is Chris Schmidt, who is the Superintendent for South County Water. I'd like to begin by saying that I'm really happy with this new agreement that we have signed with Toledo. The previous agreement was signed in 2010. It included a 75% surcharge on the cost of raw water. And when I came in office in 2012, I began working on this process to try to get where we are today. As I said, I was a 21-year customer of South County Water, and both sides of my immediate family live in the Bedford area and our South County Water customers. So when rates are high, believe me, I hear about it. The last contract we had was really a contract of adhesion, and what that means is Toledo came to us in 2010 and said, sign it or no water for you. The Drain Commissioner at that time really didn't have any choice and held no cards. We have been working, and we've been working with our partners in Temacog and these other surrounding communities. And this problem has been going on for over 50 years to try to develop a regional water authority. Now, we did try to do that, which would have taken all of the responsibility of rate setting and cost and maintenance of the Toledo plant, et cetera, would have taken it out of the hands of the Toledo City Council and out of political hands. But we negotiated about a year and a half on that, and unfortunately, City Council would not give up that authority. We went back to the tables and worked another year and a half to come up with the agreement that we have today. I'm going to outline a couple of the good parts about that, some details about our system, and then Tim is going to talk about how our water system and costs relate to those in the other surrounding communities that are getting their water from the City of Toledo. First, I want to share good news. For the first time in decades, in 2020, a couple of weeks from now, your water rate will go down. Your water rate will go down. You are currently paying $9.72 for 1,000 gallons, and you will be paying $9.22 starting January 1st. So I think that's excellent news. It's certainly going in the right direction. We did our due diligence while we were negotiating over the last 3 years to determine if there was another option that South County Water could switch to that would save the residents money. So we did several studies. The first study was to connect to the City of Monroe. We were in regular contact with the Mayor Clark, and Barry Leroy, who is the Director of Water at the city, and they were willing to take us on as a customer. But our system is plumbed from the south to the north. So in order to connect to them, we would have had to have put in $100 million worth of improvements to be able to replumb the system from the north to the south. So, we're already paying in our rate a $30 million portion over the next 30 years to the city of Toledo for the upgrade of the Collins Park plant. So by not going to Monroe, that's saving you a minimum of $70 million. The next thing we looked at was building our own plant, and we looked at that with the city of Sylvania, the possibility of us going in together. We would have been 65% of the cost, and the cost for that would have been $270 million, which $175.5 million would have been our cost at South County Water. Our last option was to connect to the Great Lakes Water Authority from Detroit. And to connect to us, that would have been $490 million. So we looked at all of our surrounding alternatives, and staying with the city of Toledo and getting a fair 40-year contract was the best, cheapest option for South County Water. So at a minimum, we've saved South County Water $70 million by staying with Toledo and going through this very arduous negotiation process. I don't know how many hundreds of hours myself and Tim have into this, but I assure you that your interests were represented fully at every meeting. Now we have the Regional Water Authority, which is a board that will determine rates going forward. So, and we have a seat at that. Toledo only has 2 seats. Everybody else has 1, so Toledo cannot carry the day just because they have the most usage and the most customers. So it truly is a fair, we're having fair representation for our rates going forward. Let's see here, some more notes I wanted to cover. So your rate is made up of a bulk cost of water from the city of Toledo. And then we have to add our costs for maintaining our lines. We have 240 miles of water line in South County Water. It's a pretty large district, and we are less populated than the other communities. So the rate that we have to add on to the cost of water from the city of Toledo is higher because we have to have more employees and more equipment to maintain a larger system, and it's divided amongst less folks. So that is the reason. Tim's going to go over how all that breaks down between us and the other communities here in just a few minutes. I will also tell you that we will not be paying for Toledo's lead line replacement or their low-income subsidy program. We do not have lead lines in our system. Our system was built in 1969, and that was already after lead lines were being used. So we will not be paying for their lead line replacement. We will be paying based on a wholesale bulk water true cost of service to provide water to us. Let's see. So we have a 40-year contract, covered that. Other pertinent informations. We do have 13 employees that do work for South County Water. We have a superintendent and an assistant, a foreman, heavy equipment operator, 2 meter readers. We have a meter repair lab specialist. We do have to do labs on test water regularly. We have a person that does mist digs, and we can get up to 100 plus of those a day to go out and mark our lines. We have 2 field utility workers, and we have 3 people in the office that are taking care of payments and billing. And we have a mechanic that we share with the wastewater treatment plant, so South County Water does not pay the whole freight on that, and also an electrician. So with that in mind, I will turn this over to Mr. Sergo for him to explain our declining rate of bulk water over the next 8 years and how most of the other communities will be paying more. And then he'll also explain what we call the octopus. Tim?
Good afternoon, everybody. First, I want to say that one of the reasons we're here today with this new contract is that the Ohio EPA had mandated to the city of Toledo, that they were, oh, let me start over. Okay,
Please.
We're here today because of some things that happened at the Ohio EPA with the water plant in the city of Toledo. And they had mandated a few years back that the city of Toledo and its customers, which we were one of, would have to put in $500 million worth of improvements into the system. So you heard the commissioner say something about we are going to be making a $30 million investment. We are 6% of the water consumption in that regional water authority. So 6% of 500 million would be 30 million. So that will be our long-term commitment over the next 40 years, which will be part of the rates that we buy the water from the city of Toledo. Then the second challenge that came about.
And every other community will be paying proportionally.
Right. So those communities that have a larger proportion will pay a percentage of that through their rates also, the 500 million. The second challenge that happened was that each of the communities, there were 8 outlying communities and the city of Toledo, had different rates. Virtually everybody was charging or being charged a different rate from the city of Toledo. So it was agreed upon by the communities that there would be an 8-year transition period. And over that 8 years, we're all going to get to a uniform rate, that we're all going to be buying water from the city of Toledo. That's part of this new unified contract. So, and that'd be the first 8 years of the 40-year contract. So the second drawing that I have is this water rates uniform rate chart. And it's labeled appropriately, and you'll see that basically Monroe County, Rossford, and Sylvania were paying one of the highest rates because we had one of the newest contracts from 2010. And then you had, of course, you had the different communities of Fulton County, White House, Northwest Water and Sewer, Maumee, Perrysburg, were all paying lower rates. So as their rates go up over the next 8 years, our rate is going to trend and go down for the first 7 years. Most of us get to the same rate at about year 7. And then after that, we'll now all be on a uniform wholesale rate, which will trend up at about a 2% increase for the 40-year contract. So over the life of this, we're going to be buying water at the same rate as with other suburban communities. And then we'll have to add, just like they will, just like Perrysburg and Sylvania, they have to add whatever the cost of running their individual water departments onto those. So currently, you'll hear terms sometimes in the Toledo news about the octopus. They're talking about this drawing here. And in the middle of the drawing, it shows that the city of water, the Collins Park water plant is in the very middle. Then it shows each community is kind of like a spoke on a wheel on a bicycle. And we're kind of up here in the, if you want to call it the northeast corner, and it talks about, or actually due north, it says Monroe County. And the first thing you see is a little spigot on there. And it tells you what we're paying for water for approximately 7,500 gallons, actually 7,480. And then it talks about what our charges are on top of it, and then what the total bill. So if you're comparing apples to apples of each community on this spoke, on the outside of this chart, it shows if you were a City of Toledo customer, this year, you'd only be paying $33. On the contrast, that same customer in Monroe County would be paying $79.73. But that's all going to change because as our rate trickles down, their rates are going up. So when you hear in the news, which Channel 13 had reported very accurately, that the City of Toledo rate is going up about 10% a year over this next 7 years, but our rate is not. So there were a lot of calls and concerns where people were panicking. So our rate is going to be trickling down to come to the more uniform rate as these other communities come up. The only other community that are in the same position as us is the City of Sylvania and Rossford.
And you can see on the chart that we are not the most expensive, like it was reported on the, I think it was Channel 11 or 13.
Right.
They had like this little thing on Facebook. It looked like they wrote it down on a napkin. And I don't know where they got the number from, or they just took what we had from last year and extrapolated it to the next year. But they didn't call and ask us. In fact, the South County Water Board had not met and voted on the budget for next year yet, so we had not set our rate. So that was a little error on their part that unfortunately led to a lot a lot of folks being upset. But as I said, your water rate for 2020 will be going down for the first time in decades. We have worked very, very hard and advocated for the South County water residents to make sure that we will be paying fair water rates going forward. It will not be used as an economic weapon. In our last contract, we couldn't even have a major business come in here without paying a fee to the city of Toledo. That is gone in the new contract. If the department, if Eagle, which used to be called the Department of Environmental Quality here in Michigan, if they come up with a more strict water standard, we're not locked in. So we have a lot of great things in this contract and flexibility. Toledo, at first, was very obstinate and dug their heels in, but then they realized we could go somewhere else, and while it would be more expensive, we could make it happen now. It was cost effective, and they really knew that they needed to keep us, and they worked very, very hard to make sure that this is as fair as possible. And you as South County Water had a representative at every meeting that was held, either myself or Tim or both of us and or our attorneys were there. So, and I'll tell you right now, there were some heated discussions, there were some fist pounding on the tables, because I was bound and determined to make sure that we were treated fairly, because in that 2010 contract, we were not.
Does anybody have any questions? If you do have questions, go to the podium. I do have a few questions from the viewers on Facebook. If you do have questions on Facebook, please ask. I'm reading the questions, and I will ask them. But if you had something you wanted Tim to say, go ahead.
I would just like to say that we were very fairly represented and very happy with Tom Graham of Linder Graham and Goldsmith, who is also the township attorney for Bedford here. They did a fine job in representing us and guiding us through the legal barriers and questions that went on for more than a year and a half on the very long and very complicated contract.
And really, it was a change in the mayor of the city of Toledo that really changed the scope of the conversation.
So I'll ask a quick question here. Why are we paying $10 more, 43, for the same water coming out of Toledo, 33, and Perrysburg is paying $10 less at 23 than Toledo? A regional partnership should be paying equal amounts. Why hasn't there been a class action suit brought on by the communities that are clearly supporting Toledo's discounted rates?
Well, I think Tim answered that question, that over the next 7 years, those rates will all become the same.
Yep. And then I have a question here. 0 to what in gallons is the minimum, and what is that rate? What is the rates after that?
Chris?
The rates stay the same.
We don't have a
we don't have a minimum.
We got rid of
charge.
we got rid of our minimum charge several months ago.
Correct.
So we don't have a
And
minimum
there is no
charge.
maximum. I mean, your charge is going to be $9.22 per 1,000 gallons. It don't matter if you use 10,000 gallons or 100,000 gallons.
I mean, there's a cost to maintain the system that everybody pays the same, but you only pay for the water you use. That's something that we changed.
So if you're a single person, each month there's a capital charge, and that is $10.76. So until your meter flips the 1,000 gallons, if you use 900 gallons, you would still only pay $10.76. As soon as the meter flips the 1,000 gallon mark, then you'll be added the $9.22 on top of the $10.76 for about $20 a month.
Right. We realized that the minimum water's cost or charge was really hurting our seniors, and it really wasn't fair. So we got that changed. The South County proposed that to the South County Water Board, and they were very supportive.
Yeah, we took care of that last year, David.
Oh, last year, okay.
Last year.
Well, I knew it was several months ago. I just exactly remember.
Time's flying.
Yeah, time flies when you're when you're yelling at City of Toledo.
So anybody have any questions? Come on up to the mic. I think it's turned on.
Is it on?
Yes.
Ken Gagne, 8311 Lambert Street, Lambertville, Michigan. My concern is I have a 6-unit apartment in Erie. And with the tenants changing, the water goes up and down. But you said the next 7 years it was going to go down. This graph shows that 2025, then it's going to spike up for 2 years. And then it's going to kind of go gradual.
Yeah, that is correct. I misspoke. It is
It's
5
gon-
years
It's going to
initially.
stay 922 for how many years?
Oh, I can't tell you what it's going to be next year until we look at the numbers of what our costs are, what our capital costs are, because we have
Right.
lines that are 40 and 50 years old that are going bad. So I can't tell you what the rate's going to be next year. We know that the rate is going to decline from the city of Toledo on what we're paying for the wholesale water, but we don't know what our costs are going to be until we get closer toward the end of the year and see what we've actually had to expend to maintain.
So it could
We-
be 922 for a year, and then it could maybe
It
be
could-
what it is now.
It could stay the same, it could go up a little bit, it could go down a little bit. It really just depends on what happens with our system.
All right.
But right now, they don't foresee.
No, we
No,
don't foresee.
no, we see a pretty flat rate going forward.
See, for instance, for a couple of months, my water in Erie was over $100. Well, I got rid of one of the tenants, and it dropped down like $25.
Someone was using some water, extra
Well-
water. Well,
She was washing her dishes in the bathtub, I heard from another tenant. Why? I don't know, but
Seems
I'm
logical.
not missing her a bit. Thank you.
No,
But
thank you.
I'm assuming that, you agree that water rate going down is good news.
It is, because with what is used there. But it all depends on what tenant it comes and what tenant goes.
Do you
'Cause
know
they're-
off?
They're all one bedroom, so,
Mm-hmm.
I had one apartment that had 2 in it, but that's pretty slim.
I got a question here. Do you know offhand how much water is required for South County during peak usage? Not sure I understand.
What's our peak flow? Well, see, this is kind of odd, Our, the more water we sell, really, the cost to everyone goes down. But because the water has become so expensive, usage has gone down. So that's actually hurt the overall budget. Then last year, we had the wettest year in 112 years, and as your drain commissioner, I can tell you, I knew about that. So when we have a wet year, people water less, people use less water. But Chris, what would you say an average year peak flow is?
peak flow is probably right around 4.5 to 5 million gallons a day. I mean, I've seen 6 million, but last 4 or 5 years, the averages have been dropping because the price of water is so high.
And 20 years ago, it was
We were pushing
8 million gallons a day. So, or in the
In
hot
July and
summers,
August.
July and August. But so that's cut almost in half. And again, it's because we've had wetter weather and we've had high cost of water.
Any more questions in the audience? I think a lot of the main questions that were, you guys answered were, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? I think it's pretty obvious, would we like to have our own plant and not pay more? Yeah, obviously, but there's a cost to change.
Correct.
And this would be major change, so even going to Monroe.
Yeah, I mean, Monroe would have been and I negotiated with Monroe. We tried to buy into the system, become a partner and not a customer. Because if we're going to be a customer in Monroe, it's no different than being a customer in Toledo. And when your contract's up, you don't know where you're going to be. So I didn't feel, none of us felt, that spending an additional $70 million at a minimum to then be a customer somewhere else where there's no guarantee, we didn't think that was the best, most financial, decision. So,
Here's one more question. That's great for 2020, but what is going on now? It's water, not gold.
well, we've got 2 weeks left of the year, and the water rate's going to stay the same. And when our rate drops from Toledo, we're going to pass that savings along.
That's all the questions I have on Facebook. If we have no further questions, or if you guys have anything
Well,
else you'd like to
You know,
add.
I'd just like to sum up by saying, if you have questions, please don't go to Facebook. Call Chris at South County Water, because you're going to get the factual answer. And it's not that I don't love Facebook. I'm on there. I've got 1,200 friends, whatever have you. But things tend to spiral out of control on social media. Just go right to the source. We've got nothing to hide. We're very proud of what we've done for you. Ask us. We'll be sure to tell you and give you the information that you need. We're just trying to be good stewards of the public's money, which I think is what you're asking of us. Other than that, I'd just like to wish everybody Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. And if you need us, we'll be there for you.
Well, like I said, thank you guys for your hard work with the contract. I know it's taken a long time, and Bedford Township, our staff appreciates it. And so with no further questions, we stand adjourned.